Derek Broaddus parked his car in the driveway of his new home and took a deep breath. The air was warm, thick with the scent of summer lawns and newly painted wood. It was everything he and Maria had dreamed of, a perfect house on a quiet street, the kind of place they had worked their entire lives for. 657 Boulevard. It even sounded grand. The kids were running across the front yard, laughing, chasing each other between boxes waiting to be carried inside. The porch creaked softly under Maria's feet as she brushed her hand over the banister. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and Derek smiled. He had no idea how quickly that feeling would change. When he went to the mailbox that evening, he expected the usual bills, maybe a welcome flyer from a local plumber. But tucked neatly between the envelopes was a thick, cream-colored letter. The handwriting was old-fashioned, deliberate, almost graceful. There was no return address. The envelope simply read, "The new owner, 657 Boulevard." He opened it right there, under the soft porch light. The first line made his stomach tighten. Greater than, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." He read on. Greater than, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming." Derek frowned, glancing toward the street. A single car rolled by, its headlights washing across the front of the house before vanishing around the corner. "Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here?" It mentioned the children, the 3 young bloods you have brought me, and asked if they would play in the basement. "It is nice to have young blood again," it said. "Once I know their names, I will call to them." A cold pulse ran through him. He turned toward the living room windows. The kids were inside now, laughing, oblivious. Maria was unpacking plates. Derek forced a smile when she waved from the kitchen, slipping the letter into his pocket. Later, after the kids were asleep, he showed it to her. They sat together at the dining table, the house too quiet, the shadows heavy. Maria read every word, her hands trembling slightly. "Is this a joke?" she asked. "They called the police." The officer who arrived was polite, calm. He read the letter twice, then looked around the room. "You haven't noticed anyone hanging around? Anyone watching?" The officer folded the letter carefully and said, "We'll look into it." But as he left, Derek noticed him glance at the house once more, as if he, too, felt something uneasy pressing from the walls. That night, the Broadduses didn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the motion lights outside made them sit up. At 2:37 a.m., the front porch light turned on by itself. Derek stood by the window, staring into the darkness. The street was empty. From somewhere, faint but distinct, came the sound of footsteps on the gravel. Then silence. The second letter arrived just 3 days later. Derek found it again in the mailbox, same cream-colored paper, same looping script, no postage, no fingerprints, no sign of who had left it. He didn't even open it right away. He stood there on the porch, the morning air cool and damp, eyes scanning the neighborhood. Across the street, an older woman in a robe watered her roses. 2 houses down, a man carried a briefcase to his car, gave a polite wave. Ordinary people doing ordinary things. No one suspicious. No one who looked like the watcher. Inside, Maria waited, clutching her coffee mug with both hands. "Is there another one?" she asked. He nodded, sliding the envelope across the table. "Greater than, 657 Boulevard is happy to know you have begun to move in. The house is crying from all the changes you are making. You don't want to make 657 unhappy." The words hit harder this time. It went on to describe the small updates they had just done, repainting the front door, changing the mailbox, replanting the shrubs by the porch. Details no one should have known unless they were watching. Greater than, "Have you found what's hidden in the walls yet? There are things waiting to be discovered. But they won't reveal themselves to anyone. Not yet." Maria pushed the paper away, her voice trembling. "How could they know about the mailbox? I changed it yesterday." That was the beginning of the sleepless nights. Every evening, they double-checked locks, turned on the alarm system, left lights burning in every room. Yet still, there were signs, small, unsettling things. One morning, Maria found the back gate unlatched, swinging slightly in the breeze. Another night, Derek swore he saw a figure standing across the street beneath a tree, just beyond the glow of the streetlight. When he blinked, the figure was gone. They hired a private investigator named Lee, a retired detective with 20 years on the force. He set up cameras around the property, reviewed footage for hours, and found nothing. Whoever's doing this knows what they're doing, he said. They're careful. They don't want to be seen. The third letter came weeks later. Greater than, I see you have filled the house with painters and contractors. That's good. I asked the Woods to watch you, and they did not disappoint. Have you met the neighbors yet? Which ones stand guard by day? Which ones by night? It listed neighbors by name, ones Derek barely knew, and commented on their schedules, their habits, even their pets. The Broadduses started to feel trapped inside their own home. Maria stopped letting the children play outside. She closed the blinds even during the day. The house that had once felt full of promise now pulsed with quiet dread. Then one evening, as Derek locked the back door, he heard something faint behind him, a soft whisper, like a sigh carried on the air. He froze, listening. It came again, closer this time. Greater than, welcome home. He spun around. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the steady tick of the wall clock. That night, another letter arrived, slipped through the mail slot instead of the box outside. Greater than, you should stop bringing the children by. It is not yet time for them to play in the basement. The house has not been readied for them. But soon, very soon. Derek felt the blood drain from his face. The basement. How did they know the kids had been playing there? Maria began crying quietly. We can't stay here, she whispered. The day Kevin Manis found the old wine cabinet, the air inside the Portland estate sale was thick with the scent of dust and furniture polish. He moved slowly through the rooms, running his hands over the relics of another life, faded photographs, cracked porcelain dolls, chipped silverware. The sale had been arranged by the family of a Holocaust survivor named Havla, who had recently passed away. Her belongings told a story of grief and endurance, of faith that had survived unspeakable loss. In the corner of the living room, half hidden beneath a lace cloth, sat a small wooden cabinet. It was about the size of a bread box, made of dark wood with ornate carvings and two little doors that latched shut with a brass lock. Kevin felt something about it, a pull, as though the object carried a history that wanted to be told. The woman running the sale noticed his interest. Oh, she said quietly. That belonged to Havla. She always called it her Dybbuk box. She said it should never be opened. Kevin laughed softly, thinking it was superstition. Dybbuk, he repeated. He knew the word from Jewish folklore, a restless, malicious spirit that could cling to objects or people. Sounds like a good story for the shop, he said. He bought it, along with a few other antiques, and loaded everything into his truck. As he was leaving, the woman stopped him again at the door. She made his promise to bury it with her, she said. But we couldn't. The rabbi said it wasn't safe to put it in consecrated ground. Her voice trembled slightly. Maybe you shouldn't keep it either. Kevin smiled politely and thanked her, but as he drove away, he couldn't shake the faint unease that crept through him. At his shop, he set the cabinet on a counter and carefully opened it. Inside were strange items: a small lock of blonde hair tied with string, another lock of dark brown hair, a dried rose, a stone engraved with Hebrew letters, a candle holder, and a golden goblet spotted with age. There was also a tiny granite statue, a woman with hollow eyes and her hands covering her face. The air that escaped from inside was thick and sweet, like jasmine mixed with rot. He coughed, waving his hand. What the hell? He muttered. That night, as Kevin closed the shop, the lights began to flicker. The air grew suddenly colder. He brushed it off as faulty wiring. But when he got home, his dreams were filled with a presence, an old woman's face, pale and wrinkled, her eyes empty, her mouth open as if she were whispering. He woke gasping for air, the echo of her rasping voice still ringing in his ears. The next morning, his shop smelled like cat urine. Every light bulb had shattered. He checked the back door, it was still locked. No signs of a break-in. He didn't tell anyone, not yet. A few days later, his employee, a young woman who helped clean the shop, came running out mid-morning. I heard someone talking in the basement, she said, pale. A woman's voice. Kevin went down with a flashlight. The basement was silent. No one there. Yet when he climbed back up, he could smell that same sweet, decaying scent again, stronger this time. He decided to give the cabinet away. A gift, he thought. Maybe it was just cursed with bad luck and he needed to get it out of his life. His mother's birthday was coming up, and he thought the little cabinet would make a unique present. He cleaned it, polished it, and set it on the table next to a bouquet of lilies. That afternoon, as she admired it, she said softly, "It's beautiful, honey." "What is it?" "A wine cabinet," Kevin said. "It's antique. From Europe." She smiled, ran her hand over the surface, and then suddenly, her eyes rolled back. The glass she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered. Kevin caught her before she fell, shouting her name. She was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said it was a stroke. She was conscious but unable to speak. Later, when Kevin visited her bedside, she scribbled 2 words shakily on a piece of paper. Greater than, hate gift. Kevin sold the box the next day. But that night, for the first time in his life, he dreamt of the same old woman again, the one from before. She stood at the foot of his bed, mouth open wide, whispering something he couldn't understand. Kevin didn't remember bringing the cabinet back. He was sure he had sold it. The receipt was still in his ledger, proof that it had left his shop. Yet there it sat again on the counter, exactly where it had been before, the 2 wooden doors closed, the faint smell of jasmine and decay seeping from the cracks. He called the buyer, but she didn't answer. A week later, her sister phoned him instead. She doesn't want it anymore, she said abruptly. She doesn't want to talk about it, either. She asked me to tell you to come get it. Her voice shook slightly. Please, don't ask questions. Kevin picked it up that afternoon, trying to ignore the goosebumps that rose on his arms as he carried it to his truck. By the time he got home, his hands were trembling so badly he almost dropped it. He left it on his porch and went inside without touching it again. That night, the smell filled the house. Sweet, rotten, clinging to his clothes and hair. He woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps, slow, dragging steps, moving through the hallway. His heart pounded. He listened, frozen, as the steps stopped just outside his bedroom door. The handle turned slightly. Then silence. When he opened the door, nothing was there. But the air felt heavy, charged, like something unseen was still in the room with him. By morning, the box was inside his living room. He hadn't brought it in. The doors were open. Inside, the items were rearranged, the goblet turned upside down, the locks of hair now twisted together, and the little granite figure facing backward. He tried to get rid of it again, gave it to a friend, then another. Each time, the same story followed. Nightmares, strange noises, the scent of flowers and rot. One man's house filled with swarms of flies that appeared out of nowhere. Another reported waking to see a dark figure crouched beside his bed, whispering in Yiddish. Kevin began documenting everything. He wrote about the experiences online, hoping someone could explain what was happening. That's how the box reached the hands of new owners, people who thought it was just another creepy internet story, eager to prove it was fake. One of them was a college student named Jason Haxton, who worked at a small medical museum in Missouri. He bought it in 2003, thinking he could study the phenomena as part of his research on cultural superstition. The first night he kept it, he woke with his eyes burning. His nose bled onto his pillow. When he turned on the light, he saw dark streaks running down his arms, blood mixed with sweat. He thought it was a nightmare. But the next day, as he walked past the museum's glass displays, every light in the hall flickered and went out at once. He began having the same dream Kevin described. An old woman, her face withered and her eyes hollow, standing in the corner whispering. Sometimes she moved toward him. Sometimes she crawled. Jason reached out to rabbis, priests, and historians. One rabbi told him the box could contain a dybbuk, the spirit of someone who died violently, trapped between worlds. You can't destroy it, the rabbi warned. You can only contain it. So Jason built a gold-lined wooden case, inscribed with Hebrew protection symbols, and sealed the dybbuk box inside. For the first time in years, the nightmares stopped. But the quiet didn't last. Even locked away, strange things still happened. Visitors to his home claimed to hear knocking from inside the cabinet. Objects would slide from shelves without reason. Jason eventually donated it to paranormal investigator Zach Baggins, who placed it in his haunted museum in Las Vegas. There, it remains to this day, behind glass, sealed and untouched. Staff refuse to stay near it after hours. Some say they hear tapping from within. Others claim to see a faint shadow reflected in the case, the outline of a woman's face, watching. One night, the motion sensors in the museum went off. Security footage showed no one there, only the cabinet, sitting still. Then, as the camera flickered, both doors of the display case trembled, just once, before going still again. Checked into the Cecil Hotel. She had arrived in Los Angeles just a few days earlier, on January 26, 2013, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Her smile bright but tired. The hotel lobby was grand but worn, a remnant of old Hollywood glamour now dulled by years of cheap travelers, transients, and those who never left. The Cecil had a reputation. Locals called it cursed. People whispered about suicides, murders, and strange disappearances, but Elisa didn't know much about that. She was 21, a Canadian student on a solo trip down the West Coast, documenting her travels on her Tumblr blog. Her posts were full of optimism and melancholy in equal measure, small reflections about loneliness, about wanting to connect, about the world being too big and too strange. At the front desk, the clerk smiled politely as she signed the register. "You'll be in room 506, he said. "If you need anything, just call down." She nodded, thanked him, and rode the elevator up. The hallway lights buzzed softly, flickering. The air smelled faintly of bleach and mildew. She pulled her suitcase along the faded carpet, stopped at her door, and hesitated for a moment before going inside. Her first few days in Los Angeles were ordinary. She visited bookstores, coffee shops, took photos of old theaters and city murals. Her last post on Tumblr mentioned, feeling off, that she wasn't herself, that something was wrong. Then, suddenly, on February 1st, her social media went silent. When Elisa missed her daily check-in call with her parents in Vancouver, they grew worried. By the third day, they called the Los Angeles Police Department. Officers searched her room, her laptop, clothes, and belongings were all there. But no Elisa. The hotel staff said they'd seen her around, sometimes talking to herself, sometimes with others, sometimes not at all. A maintenance worker mentioned she'd been acting strangely in the lobby, as if she was trying to avoid someone. Days turned into a week. Posters with her photo went up around Skid Row in downtown LA. Police dogs combed the building, but lost her scent near a fire escape leading to the roof. The Cecil's manager said no one could access the rooftop without setting off an alarm. Then the elevator footage was released. It was supposed to help find her, but instead, it became one of the most disturbing videos ever recorded. The footage showed Elisa stepping into the elevator, wearing a red hoodie and black shorts. She pressed several buttons in a strange, hurried sequence, not one or two, but nearly all of them. The doors didn't close. She peered out into the hallway, her eyes darting left and right as if she was being followed. She flattened herself against the wall, hiding. Then she stepped out quickly, looked both ways, and ducked back in again. At one point, she waved her hands in front of her face, gestures fluid, almost ritualistic, as if she were speaking to something unseen. Minutes passed. The elevator doors stayed open the entire time. The security footage glitched, the timestamp blurred, a few seconds missing. Then Elisa stepped out for the last time and disappeared from view. The elevator doors closed and reopened again and again, empty. When the video hit the internet, it exploded. Millions of people watched it, each seeing something different. Some saw fear, others madness, others something supernatural. Comment sections filled with theories. She was possessed, she was hiding from someone, she was communicating with a ghost. 2 weeks later, hotel guests began complaining about the water. It was slow, discolored, and had a strange, metallic taste. Some said it came out black before turning clear. On February 19, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez climbed to the roof to check the tanks. They were massive steel cylinders, heavy and sealed, accessible only through a small hatch at the top. When he peered inside one of them, he froze. Floating face up in the cold, dark water was Elisa Lam. Her body was bloated from weeks of decomposition. Her clothes, the same ones from the elevator video, were found beside her in the tank. The lid was closed. Police and firefighters drained the tank and brought her out. The guests were horrified when they learned they'd been drinking, cooking, and showering with the same water that had concealed her for 19 days. The investigation began immediately, but almost nothing made sense. There were no signs of foul play, no bruises or trauma. Her toxicology report was inconclusive, trace amounts of her prescribed medication, nothing lethal. Yet questions lingered. How had she gotten onto the roof when the doors were locked and alarmed? How had she climbed the tank ladder, lifted the heavy steel lid, and closed it again from the inside? No one could explain it. The hotel, already infamous, fell under an even darker shadow. Guests whispered about seeing her in the elevator mirrors late at night, her reflection standing still even after they moved. Some claimed to hear footsteps on the roof, faint splashes echoing from above. Elisa's parents eventually took her body back to Vancouver. Her blog remained frozen in time. Her last entry, a reblogged post titled, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." The Cecil's management drained the tank and sealed off access to the roof permanently. But the elevator still stops on the 5th floor sometimes, even when no button is pressed. The doors open, wait, then close again, as if someone invisible is stepping inside.